see. Let me check if it's streaming. Okay. Sending data. Yeah, it's going to start streaming in a minute. Okay, that's perfect. So it's now live on YouTube and Facebook. So just give me a second. Oh, fair enough. Yep, I see you. I see you on Facebook now live. All right. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Founders Formula. Now, I am very excited for this episode, and I'm going to tell you why. Did you know that 40 to 50% of first marriage in the world end up in divorce? Now, that's something that is fascinating and very interesting to learn, because many people go through different situations in life, marriage, divorce. And today we are going to interview Naomi Chao. And Naomi Chao is a divorce coach. So welcome, Naomi. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you. And as I said again, sometimes timing is always play on our side. So I wanted to speak to you regarding what do you do in your life?
What do I do in my life? People often ask this question. They always get fascinated when they say, "Oh, a divorce coach. What do you do?" First thing, because I'm a divorce coach, I don't actually coach people to get a divorce. So that's not what I'm there for. But so if you're in a stable relationship, you're safe. But if you do find yourself in the process or thinking about separation, then I'm your woman. So how I act is probably similar to a project manager on a building site. They connect you with an electrician, a plumber, a tiler, a builder. What I do is, if you find yourself in that place, you have a consultation with me. We go through your family history, I guess, and what led you to today. And then what I will do is that we will put plans in place so that you can see the different professionals after that. So, and I connect you with all the professionals that you will encounter in that process of going through separation or divorce.
So when you say you just said something, connect with family history. What does that mean, and why would you do that?
The story is more so how the couple met, what happened in their relationship, who contributed financially, who helped raise the children when there's children involved, how the money was split, how was the income brought into that family, and how that income was used, and where did that money go. So trying to understand that family situation. So similar, if I was to buy a business, I have to find out the profit and loss for a company and a business. So I do the same in a family setting. But in the family setting, obviously, there's not just the financial side, but there's also the raising of children, the household duties like the laundry, the cooking, the lawn mowing, the gardening, the pool cleaning, all those things, which contribute to how a marriage works. Marriage, or if people are living together, how that works in that family unit.
And that's very interesting. So do you think by going through all those things that the couple have in common, do together, don't do together, guide you toward understanding the core issue of the marriage?
In Australia anyway, how we look at a relationship when it starts to break down is we actually look at the financial and the non-financial contribution that person made onto that family. So one person might be going out to work and the other person looking after the children. And because looking after children doesn't get paid doesn't mean it lessens their value in the contribution of the family. If anything at all, it is considered just as good as somebody bringing in the money to look after that family. So when I hear somebody says, I worked all and I brought in the money and I bought that lounge over there, or I paid for that swimming pool, I always say, hang on a minute, let's step back a little bit. Who looked after the children for you to be able to do that?
Ah,
You know,
that
so yeah.
that's very interesting. So when you say a divorce coach, because I can see, sometimes I hear stories where people kind of like divorce and they go through lawsuit after lawsuit. They hate each other. They want to kill each other. So, do you kind of like try? No, do you aim to kind of like maybe smoothen like kind of like this side of things where people want to kill each other and things like that, right?
Yeah, so how I explain what I do in that sense is when you've got a raging fire, what can we actually do to decrease the flame? I don't want to be that person who pours the kerosene on top to make the fire go larger. The aim is to reduce that fire because when you're actually in that conflict, you're not thinking clearly and you're only acting out of emotion. So if we actually reduce that anger, that frustration, that hatred towards the other person, then we can actually identify the areas that we really need to negotiate and what will create the best outcome for both parties. At the end of the day, if it's high conflict, like you said, people pay lots and lots of money in legal fees. And who are the people who miss out? It's the kids. So you can spend $10,000 fighting with lawyers, or in some situations, I've even had people spend about $1.5 million before they come and see me. And it goes towards nothing that your family can enjoy. So if you have tens of thousands of dollars to waste, I would recommend trying solving it quickly and at least take your family on a good holiday so that you can have a good experience together.
But do you think that and like you say, sometimes I find it really sad. Like I remember a long time ago I had a ex-girlfriend and I seen like the family going through divorce, and it is painful for the children because there's a lot of fight that goes on between the parents, and the children are in between. They are like they don't understand. So I find it quite interesting. How can people go from loving each other so much, getting married, building a family, to like so much hatred into each other? And that's what is your perspective on that?
I think the things that I do identify is that when people go into a relationship, there's certain roles that you're good at and certain roles that your partner is good at. So what ends up happening is you default to those things. So maybe one person is really good at cooking, so they do all the cooking. And then one person might be doing the gardening or the laundry, and then they do all that. And you fall into those roles. But then over time, the person who's cooking might be thinking, I cook every day. And they feel as though the person who's doing the lawnmower only has to do it once a week, but they've actually done the cooking the whole day. And it starts with those little small things. And over time, the resentment builds because this person's cooking all the time and they're not expressing to the other person, hey, I want you to cook sometimes. And this person who doesn't cook because they never like to cook or they're not good at it, they've fallen into that role. Well, I only do the laundry and I do the lawn mowing, and I don't want to go into this person's territory because I might upset them. And so a lot of that is the communication breakdown. And when you get that slow breakdown over time, it's like little cracks. They build up over time, and then one day the crack is this big. and there's so much differences, and they get frustrated on a grander scale, but it actually comes back from a very small point in the beginning. So what I try to do is I look back at their relationship and I say, what was the thing that worked? So it's a very different way of looking at what was the thing that worked in your relationship. And they will get to reflect, oh, I did this really well, and so I took on this role. I did this really well, so I took on this role. So I bring them back a little bit and say, well, what are some of the things that really do well? And how can we preserve those things moving forward in two separate households? And the thing that if people have children, they always say the things that they did well was they brought those children into the world.
Aww.
And when people's mind shift, and then I say to them, what can we do, or what plan can we come up with that will actually help your child be stable in both homes? And usually when that conversation changes, people's attitudes towards conflict changes, because then all of a sudden they want to step up and see if they can be the hero to move it into a better space for the children. And when that happens, you know, you get a better resolution, because everybody then is willing to give a little for the greater picture, which is their children.
Wow. So we usually see marriage coach. So I heard of marriage coach, you know, people who kind of like help you to fix your marriage, right? So it's quite interesting when I heard about divorce coach, and it does actually make sense when you think about it, because a lot of people, they don't need a marriage coach. They need someone to help them kind of like settle the situation. You don't want the marriage anymore. You want the situation to end in a good way, I would say.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of the time it's more conflict resolution coaching.
Yeah, fair enough. And okay, so the next question that I have for you is, how does someone hand up a divorce coach, please?
Get in contact with one, did you say? Or
no, how do you hand up becoming?
Oh, how do you become one?
Yes, yeah.
Well, in my particular situation, I went through a very crazy divorce, a very bitter divorce, and one that came out of the blue for me. So my marriage ended quite suddenly. My husband at the time just said, I don't want to be married anymore. But it was like 2 days before we were supposed to go on a family holiday. And in that process, when we did go on that holiday, he locked down all the financial accounts, so I didn't actually have access to money.
Wow.
And then he liquidated shares under my name as well. So for me, it was a slightly different experience. He planned it and he executed it, and I didn't have a part in it. By the time I had realized money had been moved around. I didn't have a lot of money, and I was the stay-at-home parent looking after the kids. So I ended up getting a lawyer, and within a couple of months, I ended up spending about $12,000. And at the time, I was only earning $30,000. So you can imagine I could either choose to feed my children or pay the legal fees. So that became quite hard. I ended up meeting someone who said to me, Naomi, you should be able to self-represent and do your negotiations yourself. I don't know anything about the law. I'm not a lawyer. I was a pharmacist by trade, and I had a kids' education business. And so I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. I hope I don't go to jail. And in that process, what I did was I set up a support group for women. And it started off with 10 people, and they were sharing us, stories about their situation. And I found myself gravitating towards suggesting to people, maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that in your case. And then when they did, things started to change within their case and it started to shift. So after that, a friend of mine ended up introducing me to a lady who was quite wealthy and needed somebody to support her in that process. And so that's how I began to monetize what I do. And what ended up happening was I ended up having to take my ex-husband to court. And I represented myself in court against his lawyers and barristers. And that was quite scary and intimidating because they were quoting, legal stuff that I didn't know. But my whole focus was to keep my children or our children in their schools and to keep the children in their homes, in their home, because I couldn't afford to sell up the house and rent somewhere close to where we were living. So then I ended up negotiating my own case and I got a result that was favorable to me.
Wow.
And ever since then, I just was able to, I guess, demystify the process and break it down into areas that people can actually work on themselves before engaging a lawyer. So the ideal time for people to come and see me is right at the beginning when the separation just happened or when they're thinking about separating. So then we can actually put their situation into categories so that when they actually go and see a lawyer, they are able to be very clear with what they instruct on their lawyers, and that what it does is it reduces their legal fees. So how I came about it was through my own experience and through what I had to learn very quickly. And it was purely because I didn't have the money to continue on with lawyers.
And not just that's wow, that's quite an amazing story. Very brave as well, because I would say so. By the way, your ex-husband not a good man, huh?
Oh, yes.
not so nice of him, right?
Not so nice.
Not so nice, but what I'm writing notes at the same time because there's a lot of information that is quite interesting.
Yes.
When you say you went to the court to represent yourself without lawyers, while the man had lawyers, and you
he had a lawyer, he had a senior, like a barrister who's like a senior lawyer who actually fights in court. So he had a whole team of lawyers, and I was sitting there by myself.
So wow, I guess that's when the true power of being a mom came out, right?
Yeah, I think that what I ended up focusing on was, and in our particular situation, I stayed home, looked after the children for a significant amount of time. Our children were 12, 10 and 5 at that time. So I gave up my career as a pharmacist to look after our children. And I knew that I would be able to go back to work. I didn't know what that looked like. I was no longer a registered pharmacist, so I couldn't go back and work in pharmacy. But I knew that I was able to build up my career somehow. Our 3 children went to private school, so that was a lot of money. And it was important for them to stay in their school and in their safe space, in a place that they're familiar with, and it was their stability. Our home was the other thing that was important. So I really only identified the 2 important things that was, important for us moving forward. My ex-husband was somebody in the health profession who earned a lot of money. He was earning in excess of $500,000 a year. So for him to decide to cut everything off and not think about our children's future and their stability, I think lit up the fire inside of me and said, if anything I want to fight at all, it was for the children's education and for their home. For me, it was, I was fit and I was healthy. I was able to reestablish my career, but it took time for me to work up something that I could earn a significant income. So there was a huge imbalance in income because I was earning $30,000. He was on $500,000 in excess. So it was 20-fold. So for every 1 year he worked, I had to work, 20 years. So it was trying to find that balance for me to slowly catch up, and I'm still catching up 8 years later. But the things that I couldn't catch up on or was really my children's early years, and to keep them in their schooling and keep them stable so that they can, have good careers later on and be the best versions of themselves.
Wow, that's a very, I would say, a dramatic ending in a dramatic marriage, right? Dramatic divorce, like when you hear
Yeah, I didn't expect to be in that position.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up to sort of say, hey, I'll marry someone. One day I wish that he would freeze all the money. And
Yes.
for me, you don't think about these things.
And the other question that I have for you is, so many people go through divorce, right? And when you said you had the 3 kids, you have to kind of rise again from this dramatic situation. How did you manage to balance the life while raising the kids and building what you're building?
It was really hard. And my marriage ended in 2017. And in 2018, my daughter, she said to me she wanted a superhero party. And she was 6. And I said, okay, as a mum or as a parent going through this, you always think, let's try and keep everything the same as possible. And so I said to her, that's fine, but I didn't have the money to hire the entertainers to be the superheroes to come. So I ended up going onto Amazon and I bought a Wonder Woman outfit for her and for me. And I dressed up with her that day. And she had all her little friends, Batgirl, Spider-Girl, and we were both Wonder Woman. And we took some photos. And at
Recording in progress.
I ended up looking at the photo, and she had this fierceness in her face. And she was 6. And I looked at it and I said, she's got so much determination and she's got such a huge future ahead of her, that I looked at that photo and I sort of said, I think I want to be my children's Wonder Woman. And I will do everything in my power to be able to give them as much of a lifestyle that they were born into. And whatever it took, I was willing to do that balance. I worked really hard. I was really fortunate. I had, I still have a very good supportive family. My mum, my dad is still with us. I've got my 2 younger sisters and their families who were very, very helpful and supported me emotionally through that. I ended up having to really think about the things that really mattered to me. And in order for me to be able to do what I do, I needed a clear head. And so the first thing that I ended up doing was I went back to the gym. And, in so many years, I've been looking after everybody else, but I forgot to look after myself. And so I went back to the gym. And when I started exercising, I ended up getting more of a clear mind. And I was working on, strong arms like in Linda Hamilton of Terminator. So, I started looking after my health a little bit more, eating better, exercising, sleeping better. And I knew that if I did that, then I would be able to cope with the pressures of the situation.
So it is true that sometimes, I guess, when you go through a separation, you kind of like lose yourself, right?
Oh, totally.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other question, so do you believe that I notice a pattern into when from those interviews, the people interviews, do you believe that everything that happens to you through your story in life is meant to be for you to become the person that you became today?
Oh, totally. Like I think it was one of the toughest times in my life, but I think it also taught me a lot. And as a result of that separation and being in that situation where I was financially forced into a position where I had to do what I did, it built up so much resilience for me. And I was more determined to go out there and change a system that has been the same for such a long period of time. And slowly, I can sort of like see that I'm changing the landscape, but I'm still this small compared to the big. And so I can only change it in my direct world at the moment. And hopefully that I'll create a movement that will spread across the world. I mean, like you said, if every 1 in 2 people are separating from long-term relationships, we all need a better system.
Yeah, because a lot of people end up like, and I hear so many sometimes. I spoke to a lawyer before, not for my marriage, but I spoke to a lawyer before, and he said like divorce marriage is like he is a lawyer, and he said he doesn't even recommend people to go through lawyers because he said it's years of battle, years of sadness, years of like those things. So it's quite interesting. So when it comes to the movement that you're building now, what is the approach that you're using to kind of like help people into getting out of a marriage and making sure that the divorce goes like in a good way?
Look, I think when people separate and we're brought up to believe that, we need to get married, have a family, be with our partners forever and ever. So when a marriage breaks down, that carries a lot of things. Carries communication breakdown, there carries a lot of mistrust between the two parties, there carries a lot of fear as well. And fear can drive people to do crazy things in order to protect themselves. So when it comes from that place, people tend to go on the attack so that they feel protected. And when that happens, that's when the conflict, the flames increase. So how conversations with me is when people look at breaking up or people have already broken up, more and more now the conversation is they come and see me, we invite the other party to have a conversation together. And I create a very safe space for them to look at the breakdown of the relationship, that it does happen, and how do we move forward from there? And I talk to them separately and then together about their biggest fears. And the biggest fears that a lot of people have is, number one, financially, they can't support the two homes. And traditionally, if the women are actually at home looking after the family, there is a lot of fear around the women thinking, how am I going to pay for the groceries? How am I going to pay the rent? Where do I live? All that stuff. For the men, generally, this is very general speaking, they've been working, or whoever the working partner has been. So they feel that there's a disconnect with the children. So their fear in those people who've actually been working in the careers or in their partnership is they feel that they might not have access to their children. And so when you've got those two fears, it's always fear about money and fear about the children. And if you can actually find a way to meet in the middle with those two, it usually bridges a lot of the gap and the conflict, and you end up working more on a solution moving forward. And I find that whenever I work with the two people, we always end up with better solutions for everybody.
And do you use like sort of like, do you have a blueprint behind the scene where you kind of like use to uncover, find out the fears, find out the issues? So is there like a process behind the scene that you kind of like use?
Yeah. So when people come to me the first time, it's if they find me on social media and they want to connect with me and they come and have a chat to me, it's always a half an hour free chat. And in that half an hour free chat, it's for me to understand them, for them to understand what I do, and see if we can work together. So that's the first step. If they're sort of like going in and saying, I need to destroy my husband or I need to destroy my wife, I will say from the beginning, that's not going to happen, because they are still the mother or the father of their children. So we're not here to destroy anyone. So we establish that from the very beginning. There's no harsh language. At the end of that call, if they like to work with me, then we move on to the next step, which is a 2-hour discovery call. And in that 2 hours, we uncover a lot of things. Now, they either can do that together with their ex-partners, or they can do that separately. And it helps me identify what are the key areas that is of concern for them. And then, depending on people, and usually it is communication, we work on the communication and how they communicate with their ex-partner. You know, you did this and you did that on text is not helpful. And it's a lot of blame. So we work on language, we work on how they can change their language to be more inclusive, to be more positive, to be more helpful, and to add value to the situation, as opposed to blaming. And it could be sometimes working with the individual on how they got to that stage and working with them, getting them to realize what are some of the things that they can do in order to change their situation. And it's a learned skill. So it's not something that you can pick up straight away, but it's through constant practice that they start to reassess themselves and go, if I put that in a message, is it going to help the other person help me? Or is it throwing a bomb into that conversation, you know? And so it's those little checks that people go through. And over time, it gets better with that language and how they deal with the conflict and what's really important, you know? I get a lot of people who might say, you know, when the children went to the other house, they ate McDonald's. And I said, is that really? I mean, if it's McDonald's every day, it might be an issue. But if it's one meal, we have to look at it in context. Is the child in danger? Is the child's life being threatened? If it's not, we just need to step back a little bit. It angers us, but it's not the end of the world, So I put them, I guess, on a bit of a scale for people to see. And when you're stuck in your family, you don't see what's on the other side,
And have you had any situation where, let's say, one person is more committed than another one to kind of like come to you? Pretty much, let's say the wife come to you or the husband come to you. Does it happen?
It does. So I get some situations where one party started seeing me and then they invite the other party. So one might be a little bit ahead. It doesn't disadvantage or advantage one party if it does that, because I think I need to listen to both sides. Because when you're telling a story, you're always right.
Yeah.
When I tell a version of a story, hey, I'm always the hero. I'm sure you did too. But and you're always pointing fingers at the other side, and so you've got one version of the story, you've got the other version of the story, and somewhere in between is the truth. And so I do encourage a safe space for people to talk, and they feel like they can engage in the conversation, and there's no judgment from me. I get all sorts of stories, as you can imagine. So I don't get shocked by any stories. But the common theme in a lot of people is they always want what's best for their children or best for the situation. And that's what we like to work on as a solution moving forward anyway. And they get to express all their anger and frustrations with me, but they don't get to play it out. So that's important, so they feel heard, their feelings are acknowledged, the situation is acknowledged, but how do we actually improve from that, So that's what I work on with a lot of my clients. And so they usually get on board.
Fair enough. And there was a question that was in my head is, do you see more woman or men who comes to you when it comes to that situation?
I guess because I've been around a lot in the women's network. There's a lot of Facebook groups for women that I easily can join. Overall, I have probably about 80% of women, female clients. Now I'm actually getting referrals from the women who sort of like whose brother is going through a separation, or whose male friend or work colleague is going through the separation, and they come to me. So I do get referrals in that space. In 2026, I plan on working on more about supporting men, because I think in separation, men tend to withdraw. And there's only probably a small pocket of men who will actually go out seeking for help. So with the men who actually I've worked with, a lot of the times they said, I didn't even know you existed. And I think that this is the issue. And so I'm in February, I'm talking to a men's group, and my aim for 2026 is to support men a lot more in how we can actually provide men with a safe space to discuss all the things that they've held up over the years. And I see that a lot in relationships, because, when they're talking to me, they'll say, oh, she always gets her way anyway. I don't have an opinion. My opinion doesn't matter. And this is where I step up and I go, but your opinion does matter. And the role that you play in this is important. And I want you to contribute. What is it that you want? And when I've actually provided that space for the men, they will be very, very honest with me. And in that situation, it's also my role to support the men to sort of like get that across, so that they get some contribution into the discussion, and it's a positive one in building up relationships as well with their children, with their ex-wives, husbands. So, yeah.
Wow.
So I'm looking forward to 2026 working with more men.
Nice. Well, I guess men would definitely need it, because I think sometimes men, sorry to say, but they might have a little bit of a bigger ego into like, hey, be like, I don't need a coach. I mean, what do you mean? You know what I mean?
And I think that this is not a weakness. It is like, if you have a headache, you go and take a tablet. If you, want to do for a triathlon exam, you need to train for that, and it's the similar skills. And I think, and me having two older boys, I think that having this space for them to discuss and for them to have an active role in changing the landscape is so important. There's so many years, girls have like, girl power, girls can have children, girls can go out to work, have careers, beautiful. But what are we doing for our men? We haven't really supported our men, Men have continued to work, but where do we say, go men, you can be great dads.
Yes.
You can be, and this is what I want to actually create is how do we support our men so that they feel okay to step up, because every single time they do step up, you can't say that because you're a man. And I feel for the men, I feel for my boys, and that's the space I want to change.
Wow, I think I like you more now. Go men.
Go men.
So the other question that I have for you is, as a coach, you kind of like really get into people's dirty laundry, right? That's like, you know what I mean? So how do you manage to kind of like, when you finish a coaching session of someone, how do you manage, what's your daily habits, what you do in life to kind of like get out of that situation so you can get it out of your head, change your energy, shift your energy and things like that?
Yeah, I do exercise. I continue to exercise. I do that quite a lot. They always say that part of maintaining your overall health is to hack your body's feel-good hormones. And one of the things is to hug a dog. I've got 3.
Oh, nice. I love dogs.
So there's a lot of feel-good hormones. I've got, 3 great kids. We love to cook. So I love to cook. Cooking is my release, and I do that every day. I get to create meals for them that they enjoy. We get to have little traditions that bring a lot of joy into the household. And laugh a lot.
Nice. So
I guess tease my children.
Yes. Well, so you got three daughter and 3 dogs.
No. Two boys.
Yes.
A little girl and 3 dogs.
Whew. Life must be quite full.
And a bearded dragon, a lizard as well.
It must be like a very switch on life, right?
I'm always cooking for someone. Or some animal.
And you also cook for the dogs, or?
Oh no, they get more chicken.
Yeah. And there was a question that I have for you. When it comes to the impact that you have seen in your clients, what sort of impact do you see in a good scenario where, okay, fine, I help those people, I help them kind of like fix their separation? What sort of impact do you see, and what's the satisfaction that you get from it?
I have a story that I love that reminds me of why I do what I do. I had a young mother come to me with a young child. This child was only 3, and her partner had become an alcoholic, and he was drinking a lot. And she came to me and she said, I can't do it anymore, Naomi. I want to separate. I've kicked him out of the house because I can't handle the drinking and the drug use. So she came to me unsure and quite scared because she's just sent the father of her children out of the house. We had a discussion, and then she ended up having a 2-hour call with me. And she planned it on a day that he could pick up the child from daycare and that she could have that conversation. And when she came home, he was like, "Why didn't you pick up our kid from daycare?" And she said, "Well, I was on a call." And he said, "But you were on a call for a long time. Who did you talk to?" So she said, it was just a call. He demanded to see her computer. He opened it up and he saw my name. Googled my name. My name's everywhere. She's a divorce coach. Why do you want a divorce, So she got really scared. And she called me up and she said, "Naomi, he knows. He found out that I saw you." And I said to her, "Let's try not to get too worked up on this. What I would like you to do is reach out to him and invite him to the conversation." And she said, "Oh, I don't think he'll agree." I said, "That's okay. Let's give it a try. And if we don't try, we will never know. But if he says yes, it's an opportunity for us to talk." So she asked him and he agreed. So we ended up setting up a call, and it was on like a Thursday night, 8:30 at night, because we had to wait for the little child to go to bed. He wanted to record the session, but I said no. I said it needs to be a safe space where both of you can talk. He wasn't really trusting me. So when we had the call, he had his camera off, and that's okay. He would ask me all these questions, I would answer them. And then halfway through that call, he switched on his camera. So I said to him, "Thank you so much for turning on that camera. Because turning on that camera tells me that you trust me and you've trusted what I've said to you so far." So then I said to him, because he looked quite tired and stressed. So I said to him, "Before we continue, I want to know, are you okay?" That's all I asked. And he said, "No, I'm not. I'm not okay. I'm stressed. I found myself in this situation." He said, "I've started drinking a lot. And so she has kicked me out of the house." And then he said to me, "But I'm doing AA." So I said to him, "Can I just tell you something? 2 things. Number 1, you are extremely brave. Brave to turn on the camera, to trust me, and to basically tell a stranger that I've got an addiction." I said, that's to me, that's trust. And I said, "And you know what the second thing is? The second thing is, not only are you brave, but you actually are a very, very good human being. You want to improve. You recognize the problem and you want to fix it, and you've signed yourself up to AA." And I said, "That shows me that you want to be a better parent, a better person, and to really kick the addiction." So then I said to him, "Do you understand where your wife is coming from with the care of your child?" And he says, "Yeah, she doesn't trust me." So I asked him, "What can you do to gain trust from her?" And he's like, I really don't know." I said, "You do." And he said, "Maybe I can look after him for short periods of time." So I turned to her and I asked her, "Are you comfortable with that?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "How much do you feel comfortable with?" And she said, "Maybe an hour." And I turned to him and I said, "Is that good?" I said, "Because you got to start with an hour and then you can actually move up. But I said, let's do an hour on Monday, let's do an hour on Wednesday, let's do an hour on Friday, and an hour on Sunday. Then the following week, we do an hour on Tuesday, an hour on Thursday, an hour on Saturday. So you're seeing your kid every day, but just for 1 hour, because that's what you can manage and that's what she can trust you with. Is that good? They both agreed. And I said to them, you're both in your 30s. You have an opportunity on how you separate. Because you've got this child who is 3, you're going to parent together forever. But I said, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, you're going to be dating people as well. And if you stuff up this relationship and you go out and you meet someone else who's got a single mom or a single dad, and they don't have the same weekends as you and you can't see each other, you will rely on this unit to swap days, to make sure that you still look after your child. So I said, not only do you destroy this part, you destroy your future as well. And that really resonated with them. So we got onto a plan and everything. We ended the call. I was still very nervous. So I texted her and I said, how did that session go? She did a screenshot of the message he sent her after the session. And he said, thank you so much for organising that session with Naomi. After so many weeks of rain, I see a ray of sunshine.
Aww.
And to me, that's why I do what I do. The impact that I hear about, sometimes I don't hear about, but a lot of the impact is you sat in the mud with me, you helped me sort it out, and I'm in a better place because you helped me out of that mess. And that's why I do what I do. I see so many changes. People who I've worked with, they also become my friends. So it is really seeing that impact move forward, so yeah.
That's a very, very, very inspiring story, to be fair. Very emotional story. And what would be for you, where do you want to go as a coach to have more impact in people's life? Because you kind of like create a transformation into people separation, making sure that they kind of like hand things well in a good way. So what would you see is your next stage as a coach?
I think my next stage is at the moment the divorce space is very reactionary. There's a lot of people picking up the pieces. I'm working on people going through a kind split as opposed to just splitting, but to be kind in that process. So for me, I think the relationship space the marriage is one type of relationship, but we've got so many relationships that happen, relationships at work or friendship, where people go separate ways, but they end up throwing a lot of flames in that process. And so I'd like to reduce those flames.
And what do you think about outside influences into like separation? What do you say to your customers, to your people, when about outside influences? Because you must see it quite often.
Look, I think a lot of the times, if people are saying, Mikhail, you need to do this, you need to do that, I would really encourage people to stop listening to a lot of noise. And sometimes that fuels the fire as well. So a lot of the times I do ask my clients, are they helping throwing the fires to make a flame bigger, or they help reducing it? Are they pouring on water or ice to decrease the flame, or actually they're putting more sticks and more kerosene into the flame to make it work. So it's really hard to cut out the noise, especially if they've got big families. But sometimes you do have to do that in order to give yourself peace.
And I can see also just a bit of a story. So we did met in GPS with Kelly Chu. So
Yes.
is your plan really to be able to speak in group event on stage to kind of like impact more people's lives?
Yeah, so the whole aim is to spread that message of what I'm actually trying to do in terms of creating a movement called the Kind Split, so that more people take a step back and see, if you are thinking of ending any type of relationship, what is the kindest way to do it? What are the ways that preserves the other person's dignity? What is some of the things that you can actually actively do, that if you walk down the street and see them in 3 years' time, that you can actually still say hello to them? You know, there's so much about cutting off relationships, and people, once the pain is out and the damage is done, it's really hard to repair. But yeah, if I can actually have impact on a stage with greater audience, that's the goal.
But you know, I find another common trait into people that kind of like went through life and became coaches and impact other people's life. There's a fire, you know, there's a fire in each conversation. You can feel it, you can hear that there's something genuine coming out of it. And there wouldn't be like two Naomi Chao in the world, right?
I hope not. Because if there is, I'd like her to come and be my twin and help me work. Sometimes I feel that there's not enough time in the day.
It's true. Well, I guess what you do, I mean, definitely can have a lot of impact on a lot of people, because again, if 1 in 2 marriage end up in divorce, especially the first marriage, well, that says a lot into how much suffering people go through, and how much people sometimes. To me, I feel like, I guess it's good to have the understanding and to have someone to kind of like guide you onto those things, because sometimes people waste so much like energy, money, everything to kind of like, hey,
the impact,
destructions.
The impact of separation and divorce in Australia costs the economy like in the billions of dollars. You've got people with mental health issues, it starts with this conflict at home. Your mental health is affected, your work is affected, you're emotionally, you can't move on. There is the financial side, the productivity for a company can decrease dramatically if 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 people go through a bitter divorce. Then you've got a lot of fallout, relationship fallouts. So there's almost like a domino effect.
Yes.
And as well as that, you get the emotional, physical side. You age a lot. You end up crying, and it takes more muscles to cry than to laugh. So you get wrinkles faster. And then the financial, the how much you spend on legal fees, emailing back and forth, going through court. It's a system and it's a process that actually destroys a lot of relationships and lives, and then it takes people a lot of time to build back up again. So if I actually can change that conversation and make it more collaborative, more productive in moving forward in a positive manner, we can save a lot of people a lot of money.
Yes, but just what you said, not just the money, the emotional struggle, the emotional pain, the kids' understanding of life. There's so much when I kind of like rewind, try to think about, there's a lot that is going on behind the scene And yeah.
Yeah. And like, well, that emotional side is so huge because when you destroy a lot of that, it affects your relationship moving forward with future partners, with, your children, your family, your friends, a whole web of networks. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, that is a very powerful cause, Naomi. So another question that I have for you is, let's say, so you said you created that movement, that group. What is it called again?
The kind split.
The kind split. If someone wanted to kind of like maybe be part of the group, join or learn more about what you do, how could they access that group, or how could they reach out to you?
They can start by looking on my website. So it's naomiko.com. That's it. Thank you. And I'm actually in the process of updating that website. So you'll probably get a new website in a couple of days. So they can, it's Naomi Ko, so NaomiCao. And all of my social handles are the same as well. Okay. So they can look me up on Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok. So I'm a little bit everywhere. So they'll be able to look me up and connect with me and send me a DM or follow me.
Amazing. Yes, I'm just looking a bit. Okay, fair enough. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. Screen share stop. Wow, that was thank you. Well, I guess okay, a last thing that I want to ask you, Naomi, please. If someone what could they do at home? Let's say someone is going through a bit of a situation, right? What can someone do at home to kind of like acknowledge that there is a split happening, but also what can they do to be kind to their partner, to the other person, to the other half, right? Just before, it's like, the problem that I see is like when you meet someone, right, it's lovey-dovey, it's butterfly, and you're like, I love you so much, like, right? And and then after some time, you kind of like, it's very sad because a lot of people end up hurting each other's feeling without even considering the person. When they knew that they grew together, they were like, hey, you know what, you're my best, my half, right? So what would you recommend to someone going through this process? Three things that they could do to acknowledge this into their relationship and create a safe space for a split.
Look, I think when people go through this space, there's a lot of things that they can't handle themselves. And it is okay to seek help. So the first point of call should be a counselor, a divorce coach, a psychotherapist, a psychologist, anybody that can actually provide a safe space for them to address the issues. So that's the first thing. Because all those professions, what we do is we actually look at how you can express your emotions, how you can actually move forward. That's always should be the first point. The second thing that I encourage people to do is to journal and to put things into diary, like if they can sit down, if they're having a frustrating moment, to go write it down, or if they're feeling sad, to write it down. Because what it does is it gives you an outlet. You don't take that frustration or anger out on a person, on a child, on another adult, on your friends. So an exercise book that you can just write it all down every single day. Get into the habit of writing it. And writing, you can sort of like put down all the things that are negative or that you're feeling at the time. But at the end of that, to always write 3 things that you're thankful for. You're thankful that you have the health to do X, Y, Z. You're thankful that you have 3 dogs that you can cuddle. You be thankful that it's a nice sunny day and it puts you in a good mood. It has to be the little things that you are thankful for. And the last thing is to actually get ourselves back into nature or exercising. And it doesn't have to be inexpensive. You don't have to join a gym. You don't have to, do crazy things, but just to go out there, go for a walk. And it's amazing how many times it clears your head once you actually go out for a walk. So 20 to 40 minutes walking doesn't have to be stressful in the system. You don't have to turn into a marathon runner. But walking releases that, and it gives you the fresh air, gives you the vitamin D, and it releases the feel-good hormone. So if you can do those 3 things, which are very cheap and a lot of times very free, you'll be able to get on the right path.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Naomi. Beautiful interview again. Very lot of knowledge, lot of understanding in this interview. So I'm very grateful to have you on the show, to join us today. So I guess that would be like everything. I asked all the question, and I think it was very valuable. So if anyone is going through a split, is going through a time where they need some advice, some support, make sure to watch the video, because there's a lot of information, a lot of great content coming from Naomi. So thank you again for your time, Naomi.
Thank you so much. It was
Super.
really great to be on your podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks.